The ancient Sibyl oracles and the ancient prophecies about the holy passion and coming of our Lord Jesus Christ. The holy passion and the coming of Christ through the ancient prophecies. These are writings by Maria Croni, Doctor of Byzantine Philology, University of Athens. She's an author. She conducts an important historical research on the prophecies that existed from the ancient Greeks and other ancient peoples of the East about the coming of Christ. Let's remember the three magi who came to who followed the star, who believed that it was the coming of a great Messiah. Now, what are the biblical and extra-biblical testimonies about the crucifixion and the saving work of the Messiah Christ in the world? Why are these testimonies an important source of information about their ancient civilizations? What were the oracle symbols and how were they connected to Constantine the Great? And what was the message of extra-biblical testimonies in the modern world? Extra-biblical testimonies: China, Confucius, 5th century BC, and the prophet Tse. Babylonia under Nebuchadnezzar, Papyrus in the 3rd century BC, India, Buddha Gautama, 5th century BC. Plato of Greece. Plato had written in his book Law and Appointees, quote, "The just man without having done injustice will be scourged, beaten, and finally crucified," end quote. In Plato's Republic, BV 362, there is also a prophecy equal to those of the prophets of the Old Testament. He will be stripped of everything except justice because he was by nature opposed by the behavior that had been practiced until then. Without wronging anyone, he will be slandered, so slandered as an unjust man that he will be tortured for justice and will be filled with tears because of his bad faith, but he will remain unmoved until death, and while he will be just, he will be considered unjust for his whole life. Having such dispositions, the just man will be scourged, twisted, and bound, and from the many wounds on his face, his eyes will become red and inflamed, and in his last moments, after suffering every evil, he will be nailed to a high tree, and you should know that it is not just, but since he wants it this way, let it be done. BV 362. Who prophesied these things and from whom? Socrates. Socrates sees and speaks of the suffering God-man through the bustling crowd of idolatry in order to advise Alcibiades in his relevant question that how we should pray and what to ask for will be taught to us by the one whom God will send us. These are the things Socrates foretells. Solon writes, "Whenever in divided humanity the incorporeal God will take flesh, this God will bring deliverance from passions. This incorporeal God will be hanged by an ungrateful people and will voluntarily suffer all passions." The oracle Sibyls, the Sibyls also, who were ancient soothsayers who had the ability to prophesy the future without being asked and without being paid for it, falling into ecstasy like the oracle of Pythia of Delphi. We also learn about them from Socrates in Plato's work Phaedrus, the Delphic Sibyl in Plato's work. Phaedrus prophesies, "I openly praise the great Son of the immortal God, you who are much praised, to whom the Supreme Parent handed over the throne, so that he who was not born has as a dual being, who was because of the flesh appeared and bathed in the currents of the Jordan River." She even prophesies where he will be bathed. "In the Jordan River, which he leads, dragging the waves with shining feet." On Mount Athos, there are also manuscripts that preserve prophecies of the oracle Sibyl about the coming of Christ. For example, in a manuscript called Memoir of the Holy Apostle Philip, kept in the holy monastery of Dochirao, the following is mentioned: After a long time, someone will arrive in this divided earth and will be born with undefiled flesh. With inexhaustible limits as a deity, he will redeem man from the corruption of incurable passions, and an unbelieving people will envy him, and he will be hung high as a condemned man. He will suffer all this with meekness. The same manuscript mentions a shocking prophecy about the divine human nature of Christ, man God, about his voluntary passion, but also about his resurrection. A heavenly one presses me strongly, who is a three-rayed light, the Holy Trinity. This is the suffering God without his divinity suffering anything, because he is at the same time mortal and immortal. He is at the same time God and man, who suffers everything from mortals, namely the cross, the humiliation, the burial. He once shed hot tears from his eyes. He fed 5,000 with 5 loaves, something that required divine power. Christ is my God, who was crucified on the tree, who breathed his last, who ascended from the grave to heaven. This is what the Sibyl of Libysia also prophesied in his work. He, according everything, accomplishing everything with his word, will heal every man, will calm the winds with his word, and calm the stormy sea, having trodden it with the feet of peace and faith. To insulting accusations, he will offer his cheeks. And the symbols of the ancient prophecy, and he will also turn his back, pure back, into scourges. And while they are beating him, he will be silent so that no one will understand who he is, whose son he is, where he came from, to speak to the dead. And he will wear a crown of thorns, and they will pierce his side as a reed according to their custom. The Sibyl of Chimea prophesies, in the last years he exchanged with the earth heaven, and after he came invisibly from the loins of the Virgin Mary, they even say her name here, a virgin called Mary. He came from the loins of Virgin Mary, he emitted a new light, and when he came from heaven, he put on mortal form, became flesh after the lapse of time, and was born, was created similar to the form of a mortal, and was born as a child with a virgin birth, a fact that is a great miracle for mortals, but no miracle at all for God the Father, the God, the Son, and the Son, who, when the infant was born, the earth was filled with joy, the heavenly throne was illuminated, and the world rejoiced. The same oracle, the Sibyl of Chimea, soothsayer in Plato's book, Phaedrus, prophesies this: Wretched one, you did not recognize your God, whom he bathed in a triple stream of the Jordan, and flew away for a long time. He who before the earth and the starry sky was sovereign, with the word of the Father and the pure Spirit, and although he was strong in flesh, he flew quickly to the house of the Father. The prophecy also is of the same kind. He will go to Hades to spread hope to all, and he will fulfill the fate of death after sleeping for 3 days, and then freeing the dead, he will lead them to the light, making the beginning of the resurrection for the elect. The Sibyls also speak of the incarnation of God, the word, as follows: The Son of God will come to earth and will wear human flesh, being likened to the mortals of the earth. His name will bear 4 vowels and 2 consonants, 8 units, 8 tens, and 108, namely 888. We see numerology was very loved at that time, the ancient times. And indeed, the word Jesus has 4 vowels in Greek: I, iota, eta, omicron, ypsilon, Jesus. The vowels in Greek, and 2 consonants, S. I for I is 10, eta is 8, S is 200, omicron is 70, ypsilon is 400, and S again is 400, which sums is 10 times 8, plus 10 plus 8 plus 200 plus 70 plus 400 plus 200 is 888. Okay, that's the Greek Isus. The above prophecies are also mentioned in other manuscripts found in other monasteries of Mount Athos or elsewhere, for example, in the Sinai Monastery of St. Catherine. They are also cited in modern books in the Great Synaxarist of the Orthodox Church by Archimandrite Victor Matthew, St. Catherine of Alexandria and the Sibyls. And for those who may doubt that the above were actually said by the Sibyls, the oracles, and claim that they are inventions of some Christian monks, the following indisputable fact is sufficient. It has been confirmed from various sources that these prophecies and others, whether of the oracle Sibyl or of other wise Greek oracles, were used by St. Catherine, specifically in 305 AD. St. Catherine of Alexandria was criticizing Emperor Maximinus for his pagan policy, and the latter then gathered the wisest pagans of the empire to convince her and make her a pagan. In the dialogue that followed, all this wise and educated woman in Greek education, in her attempt to prove that Christ is the only God, mentioned, among other things, the prophecies of the Sibyls, the oracles, of the ancient oracles, who were supposedly, quote-unquote, pagan. Glory to you, Lord, glory to you. So this is amazing, isn't it? They even knew that it was a Virgin Mary. They even knew he would be bathed in the River Jordan. They even talked about his descendants to Hades and the resurrection of the dead, and that they would be the first resurrected. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Please support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.